National Police Commissioner Fannie Masemola says extra security has been assigned to KZN's top cop, Lt-Gen Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, due to threats he has received. This comes after Mkhwanazi accused Police Minister Senzo Mchunu of being influenced by outsiders. Mchunu has hit back, though, denying any ties to controversial businessman Vusimuzi CAT Matlala or ever receiving any benefit from him. Well, joining me now to discuss this further is Professor Nirmala Gopal, a criminologist at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Professor, what do these threats, though, and allegations say, I guess, about the tensions within the police leadership right now, as someone who has been following these events perhaps a lot more closely than a lot of us have had to do?
So good afternoon, Vuyo, and good afternoon to your viewers, and thank you for having me on your show. So I think, yeah, the obvious consequence of that is there would be a great deal of tension in the country, not just in the state spaces or the government spaces, but I think within the population at large as well. So I think there would be a great deal of tension, and I think that's something we need to keep an eye on. And that's an issue that the state has to watch very closely.
Well, obviously, I mean, I cannot divorce the National Police Commissioner from his, or take away, like from his demeanor, how he tends to behave, how he tends to speak, and so on. But I mean, I was particularly struck, I must say, by how he's always calm, no doubt. But even though you're saying this matter is very serious and it's getting all the attention that it deserves, but I didn't get that urgency. I didn't get, to sense from his voice and from his demeanor the seriousness with which he says, I mean, this issue should be treated, and it actually is.
So I think, I think perhaps our focus should be on the president, really. And I heard the president yesterday, I think, on a news channel, where he spoke about the fact that he's going to deal with this matter immediately he returns from Brazil, where he's busy with the BRICS summit. And I think perhaps that's the space and that's the voice we should really be listening to at this point in time. Because fortunately or unfortunately, the president is the skipper of the ship, and the final accountability will rest with him. And I think listening to his voice might be the more critical voice to listen to.
Can I play devil's advocate here, Prof? And for
Sure.
a good couple of reasons. One, the president is not known for moving with speed on these sorts of issues that people would say require urgency, number one. Number two, Parliament, as an example, does have a constitutional obligation to hold the executive accountable. In other words, it's not an either-or situation. Parliament can actually initiate parallel processes, for its own sake, precisely because it does have a constitutional mandate to actually do so. And then thirdly, the National Police Commissioner, who is Commissioner, General Mkhwanazi's boss, does have his own responsibilities when it comes to what they should and shouldn't be doing. So I'm saying here it doesn't have to be either or.
No, so I think what's really important for us to understand is that in any constitutional democracy, the Constitution is the highest legal instrument that we've got to abide by. And our Constitution at the moment gives equal rights to every person who belongs to the country. So in as much as, popular view would want parallel processes, if it's possible, and if it's procedural, and if protocol, of course, allows that, we might want that. It might not be fair to the accused or the person against whom the allegations have actually been met. Having said that, I'm not saying that the allegations should not be investigated. Absolutely, the allegations have to be investigated. Any allegation that's made must be investigated. But I think what the president has to be cautious of is the fact that in no instance can he violate the rights of the police minister. So maybe that could be a little bit tricky. But having said that, I think what the president could do, and personally, I'm not a fan of these commissions and task teams that are usually set up for two reasons. One is that it takes an enormous amount of time to get to a successful outcome. And secondly, we invest in enormous amount of resources that could be invested elsewhere. But having said that, I think it's absolutely critical for the president now to act with the urgency that this matter deserves, because I think there's a bigger underlying issue here, and that is the social and political instability of our country. These allegations have actually threatened our democracy at this point in time, and has definitely threatened security in the country.
I'm also, asking this question the way I've asked it also because there are other factors, that play a role, or that are definitely going to play a role here. One of them is the dynamics within the president's own party, which often play themselves out, especially in situations like this, because you never know who the real beneficiaries of whatever largesse that get, dispensed with by such criminals as the ones that have been mentioned by the KZN Police Commissioner. So those dynamics also do come into play. Let's take the situation of the president himself. Read here. Pala, we don't know who played what role, and that too gets to play. And I would tend to probably also, I would listen to, let's say, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police in Parliament, who says, whatever we do right now, nothing should replace an in-depth look at not only what has gone on here or the allegations that General Mkhwanazi is making, but hopefully once and for all, we will give this not only the attention, but also the depth and the time that it actually needs to get to the bottom of these issues, hopefully once and for all, so that we're able to deal with the issues or the problems that have been plaguing the police for quite some time.
So yeah, I think the manner in which you articulate those questions and statements is primarily, I suspect, based on the fact that this is an extremely complex matter. And I think it's complex not by the very nature of these specific allegations, but it's complex because of the layers of complexity that we naturally have to add on based on South Africa's history. The political history of South Africa, the way in which our state has been governed, etc. On the one hand, we have the Pala incident, then we have a litany, a range of other incidents and instances where we've seen corruption happen in our country. Unfortunately for us, I don't think, or perhaps in the majority of the instances, it has not been handled in the way that our rule of law would expect it to be handled. And as a consequence of that, and I think what I hear you say as well, is who's going to need to protect who in this kind of situation. And let's be honest, it's not just an expert opinion that needs to bring this out. Everybody knows this. The majority of our citizens are aware of this as well. But I think what's going to be very critical here is, of course, acting with speed, whilst making sure that procedurally there are no violations, because usually we lose cases in the country at all levels because of procedural unfairness. And oftentimes it bungles up very important cases. So we got to act procedurally fair, with urgency, with real experts. And I think importantly to have, one of the things I think that we don't have at this moment, and perhaps this incident will push us into that direction of thinking, is a police ombudsman. Why don't we have an independent person set up so that he or she can adjudicate on these matters through an independent lens? And I think that autonomy or independence is lacking within the police ministry at the moment, or within our security landscape or environment. So, Puya, this is just so complex. There's so much for us to engage with. And I think it really needs a huge debate where we bring in the voice of the public. Because at the moment, you probably are aware that social media is abuzz with citizens commenting. And whether we like it or not, that's a very influential space. And so what is the perspective of the people of our country in terms of how these kind of matters are actually addressed? If it's not addressed in the way that it should be, what kind of message are we sending to to the citizens of our country?
I can't agree with you more. In fact, you have answered my question on that. Was as much as the issue is urgent and something has to be done, but we also have to look at what brought us here. But I can't leave, although we've run out of time and I'm going to get into trouble here, I have to ask you this because it's something you've been watching closely, and we've been canvassing various people's opinions on the person, around the person who, of course, started it all on Sunday. He does have his supporters who've been there. Some of them are agitating right now for support for him because they reckon he's been doing really good work. There are others, of course, who have pointed out to certain instances which they say prove that he's not the saint that some people project him to be. Just from where you sit, how has he done his job from the time that he took over as the Provincial Commissioner in KwaZulu-Natal?
So I think in terms of an objective response, if I had to look at the kind of statistics, crime statistics that we see being reported on, and I see, categories of crime that have been reduced, which have largely been attributed to his intervention. Of course, he's a hero in KZN, firstly, and I think in many respects, he's a hero nationally at the moment as well. So he seems to have a really good track record, and if those who believe that he's not as innocent as he makes himself out to be, then they should produce the evidence to claim or to prove otherwise. I think evidence is just so critical to anything that we say and do within a democracy or in any country if we want to prove something in a court of law.
Professor Gopal, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.